The morning I came home from my sister's house and found the locks changed on my own front door. I did not knock. I did not call my son. I did not stand on my own porch and wait to be let into the house I had paid for with 30 years of 12-hour shifts and missed holidays and nights I couldn't afford to be tired. I sat in my car, key in hand, and I looked at that door for a long time. The new lock was chrome, still catching the morning light like it was proud of itself. I had chosen the original lock in 2009, the same year I bought the house, a deadbolt with a matte finish that matched the door hardware. That door was solid mahogany, a little warped at the top from a storm we had in 2014. Now it had a new face, and I was a stranger to it. I want to tell this story the way it deserves to be told. Not with rage, though I had earned the right to rage. Not with self-pity, because self-pity was never something I could afford, and I am too old to start now. I want to tell it clearly, the way you tell something when you finally understand what it was really about. So let me back up. My son and his wife moved in 2.5 years before that Sunday morning. He had been laid off, a real layoff, not an invented one. A whole division dissolved at once, 2 weeks' notice, and a box of desk items. I knew they had car payments and a rental in East Nashville that had become unaffordable when the neighborhood changed. I offered before they asked. Come stay, get steady, save money. I had the space. The house was paid for. They were my family. My son said 6 months, his wife said at most. 6 months became 12. 12 became 20. I stopped counting somewhere in the second year because counting made it heavier, and I was trying not to let it be heavy. I told myself the things you tell yourself when truth is already making itself known, but you are not ready to receive it. The house is big enough. Family is family. This is what you do. The changes came gradually, the way erosion always does. A piece of furniture moved. My good dishes relocated to a high shelf, replaced by a set she preferred. My reading chair migrated from the sunroom, where the afternoon light came through the window and rested on the page like a warm hand, to a dark corner of the spare bedroom where no one would ever read in it again. Each time I mentioned something, gently, carefully, my son would nod with a look that was almost apology. Then he would look at his wife, and that would be the end of it. She had a way of making silence feel like authority. I had spent 31 years as a charge nurse, and then a nursing administrator at a hospital in Nashville. I had managed staff and budgets and patient crises, and people who believed volume was the same as competence. I knew something about difficult people, but my daughter-in-law was not difficult the way a colleague is difficult. She was difficult the way water is difficult, patient, finding every low point, filling every gap, wearing things down so slowly you could not name the moment they changed. The week before I left to visit my sister in Knoxville, she mentioned they were reorganizing the kitchen. I did not ask what that meant. My sister and I had kept the same rhythm for 15 years. Twice a year, spring and fall, 4 days each time. She is the one person in my life who does not require anything of me. We read books and made bad decisions about pastry and talked about things that had nothing to do with either of our troubles. I needed those 4 days in a way I could not have fully articulated at the time. When I pulled into my driveway that Sunday, the first thing I noticed was the mat. She had replaced my mat. I had kept the same plain gray doormat for 3 years. The new one was terracotta, with a leaf pattern and the word welcome in a script that was too cheerful for what I was about to discover. The second thing I noticed was the lock. I put my key in, turned it, felt it catch on nothing. I tried twice more. Nothing. I knocked. No answer. I called my son. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. I am at the front door. My key does not work. 11 minutes later, the door opened. Not my son. Her. She was wearing her robe and holding a coffee mug, and she looked at me the way you look at an appointment you forgot you scheduled. "Oh," she said, "we got new locks." She said it the way someone announces a new throw pillow. Casually, like I might find it interesting. "This is my house," I said. She tilted her head a little. "We've been wanting to make things more secure. It's actually a safer neighborhood now. I can have the guy come by to cut you a key. He's pretty busy this week, but probably by Thursday." I noticed she had not moved to let me in. I was standing on my own porch, and she was on the other side of the door, and she had not stepped back. "Where is my son?" I asked. "Still sleeping." She wrapped both hands around the mug. "You could grab some breakfast and come back in a couple hours. He had a late night." I looked at her, then at the door, then at the welcome mat that was clearly not meant for me. "All right," I said, "I'll do that." I walked back to my car. I did not go to breakfast. I sat in my own driveway for 42 minutes, and I thought about everything very clearly, the way you think when the noise finally stops and you can hear yourself again. I had the deed to that house. I bought it in 2009 in my name only, recorded at the County Register of Deeds. I paid it off in 2018. I had never added my son to the title, never added anyone. The utilities were all in my name: water, gas, electric, internet. Every bill, every account, every key, all mine, because I had never stopped to ask whether any of that needed to change. I started the car and drove to a hotel. I want to say something about that hotel room, because people sometimes assume I must have been frightened. I was not. I was something older and quieter than fear. In my years of nursing, I sat with people at the end of their lives. And I learned that there is a particular calm that arrives when something is finished, and you know it. That was what I felt sitting at that small desk. Not grief, not anger, not panic. Completion. Like turning in the last page of a report you have carried too long. I opened the Notes app on my phone and wrote a list. A procedural list. Not an emotional one. Item by item, what I knew and what I would do. I pulled up the number of the attorney I had used for my divorce 11 years earlier. She was semi-retired, but she still took cases she found worthwhile. I did know if she would find this one worthwhile, but trust is not something I build quickly anymore, and she had already earned it. She answered on the second ring. I gave her the facts without drama. My house, my name on the deed, no lease ever signed. 2.5 years. My son and his wife, the new lock, the voicemail. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something I have thought about many times since. "You're not asking for permission. You're asking for procedure." "Yes," I said, "that's exactly right." We talked for 40 minutes. She walked me through the notice. A formal termination of occupancy, 30 days, served properly by a third party. She explained that occupants by consent, no matter how long they have been present, hold no automatic claim to permanent residence when there is no lease. She said her associate could handle the service. She said I did not need to be there for any of it. Before we hung up, she said, "You understand this will complicate things with your son." "Things are already complicated," I said. "I'm just the last one to say so." That night I reviewed my bank accounts. I had added my son to a supplementary account before his layoff in case of emergency. A practical decision made with good intentions. What I found when I looked carefully had nothing to do with emergencies. Over 14 months, there had been a steady pattern of transfers, small individually, consistent over time. I added them up twice to make sure I had the number right. $19,240 moved into an account number I did not recognize. I sat with that information for a while. I did not cry. I have been a nurse too long to let shock stop the work that still needs doing. I closed the bank app, set my phone face down on the desk, and looked out the window at the parking lot below. Then I picked the phone back up and closed the supplementary account. My son called at 10 the next morning while I was finishing oatmeal in the hotel dining room. The associate had arrived at the house at 9:45. Mom. His voice had a quality I had not heard from him in many years, something between confusion and the dawning of something worse than confusion. There is someone here with legal papers. I know, I said. What is this? A notice, 30 days? Mom, where are you? I'm having breakfast, I said. Read the papers carefully. I'll be available for a conversation this afternoon. Not for shouting. A conversation. He started to say something else. I ended the call. She called 4 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. I asked for a meeting 2 days after the papers were served. A coffee shop near the hospital where I had spent my career. A place I knew well, and they did not. My attorney's associate sat beside me. On the table in front of me I placed 3 things: the deed, the bank statements, and a brief summary my attorney had prepared. They arrived together. She sat down like someone who had prepared remarks. She talked about investment, about contribution, about how 2.5 years of living somewhere counted for something legally. She used the word unfair more than once. She talked over my son, which was something I had not noticed her doing as clearly before, or perhaps something I had noticed and filed away without letting myself look at it directly. When she paused, I slid the bank statements across the table. I placed my finger on the line that showed the total. $19,240, I said. Over 14 months, into an account neither my son nor I can identify. My son looked at the paper. Then he looked at her. The silence between them was the kind of conversation that has already happened somewhere private and cannot be taken back. What account is this? He asked. His voice was careful, like a man testing weight on ice he is not sure will hold. It was for us, she said. I was saving for our future, for when we got our own place. Whose account is this? He said again. I don't recognize this number. She started to answer. He held up one hand, palm out, not loudly, just firmly. She stopped. I have watched people absorb information that changes everything in a single moment, and I watched my son do it at that table over about 40 seconds. His face did not collapse. It went still, the way faces go still when everything reorganizes beneath the surface. Mom, he said. He did not look at me. He was still reading the statements. I didn't know about this account. I know, I said, and I meant it. His wife shifted to a softer angle then. Explanations, family loyalty, the idea that we could all work through this together if I would just be reasonable. I let her speak. Then I said what I had come to say. Here are the terms. 30 days, as written in the notice. Utilities remain under my control. The supplementary account is already closed. Any legal remedy for funds removed from my account will go through proper channels. When I return to my house, I expect no interference. She stood. She said things I will not repeat here because they cost her more than they cost me. Then she walked to the door and stood there. My son did not follow. She left. He sat across from me for a long time after that, looking at the bank statements, then at the deed, then at the wall past my shoulder. He did not make excuses for her. He did not try to explain her in a way that would ask me to reduce what I knew. After a while, he said very quietly, "I stopped looking at the things I didn't want to see." "So did I said, "for 2.5 years. He nodded. We did not fix anything that day. There is no conversation that repairs 2.5 years of smallness and silence in an afternoon. But we began, and beginning is something. She left the house before the 30-day deadline, 21 days in. My son moved into a short-term rental and left her to make her own arrangements. I heard later that she had consulted an attorney about a claim based on improvements made during occupancy. The claim was filed and dismissed. A house you do not own cannot be improved into ownership. She learned that through proper channels, which is often the only way that lesson lands. On the 32nd day, I drove home. The gate was unlocked. The key I had made at a hardware store worked in the new lock because my attorney had sent a letter during the notice period reminding them that the property owner retained the right of access at all times. Someone had apparently found the time to have a copy cut after all. I opened the front door slowly. She had redecorated more than I had realized in the time I was away. Different curtains, a gallery wall in the hallway, full of photographs I didn't recognize. My reading chair still sat in the dark corner of the spare room, useless. I stood in my own living room doorway and took a breath. Then I rolled up my sleeves. I spent 3 days cleaning, not because the house was dirty. It was reasonably kept, but because cleaning a space back to yourself is its own kind of honest work. No speeches, no witnesses, just steady motion. I took down the gallery wall. I rehung my own pictures. I brought my curtains back from the storage bin in the garage and put them where they belonged. I moved the reading chair back to the sunroom, back to the window, back to where the afternoon light knew to find it. On the 4th day, I ordered paint, sage green, soft and warm, a color I had thought about for years without ever acting on. The painter worked 2 days. When he was finished, the house smelled like itself again. That first evening, I sat in my chair in the sunroom and watched the evening news at the volume I liked, which is moderate. I did not check the hallway to see if the sound was bothering anyone. I did not adjust anything about myself to accommodate anyone else's comfort in my own home. I want you to understand what a small thing that is, and how very large it felt. My son came 3 weeks later. He knocked and waited at the door. That small thing, the knock, the waiting, told me something had shifted in him, some new understanding of what it means to ask rather than assume. I made coffee, and we sat at the kitchen table, and he told me what he had taken too long to say. Her family had been discussing the arrangement long before the layoff. They had believed that a long enough stay created something, a gray area, a claim, something they could use. When the opportunity came, she had seen it clearly and moved toward it with intention. The locks were not impulsive. The transfers were not impulsive. She had been working toward something for a long time, and my son had allowed himself not to see it, because seeing it would have required him to act. "I kept waiting for it to level off," he said. "I told myself you were fine. You never said anything." "I was fine," I said, right up until I wasn't. We did not resolve everything that Sunday, or the Sunday after that. Recovery from a long silence is slow, and it should be slow, because rushing it only produces the appearance of repair without the thing itself. But we kept going. We kept showing up at the table. That is more than I expected, and more than I had some days dared to hope for. There are things I know now that I did not know how to say when I needed to say them. I know that patience, applied in the wrong direction, is not a virtue. It is a vacancy. I know that keeping the peace by shrinking yourself in your own space is not peace. It is a performance of peace, and it is exhausting, and it teaches everyone around you that the performance is all they need to receive. I know that the moment I stopped performing, the moment I sat in that car and let everything become clear, was the most useful moment I had spent in 2.5 years. I know that fear and clarity feel completely different in the body, and that I had confused them for a long time. And I know this. The $19,000 is a loss I will absorb. The 2.5 years is time I cannot recover. The chair was returned to the window, but the afternoons I did not sit in it because I was making myself small are gone. Some costs are real and they stay real, and you do not pretend otherwise. What I gained in exchange is harder to name, but I know it when I feel it. I feel it on Wednesday evenings when my friends sit at my dining table and we talk without performing anything for anyone. I feel it when I choose what is on the television and at what volume. I feel it when my son knocks and waits, and I open the door and let him in because I choose to, not because the alternative is too much to face. Last Sunday he asked me whether I had been afraid, that morning in the car. I sat with the question. I wanted to answer it truly. No, I said. I was clear, there's a difference. He thought about that. Then he said he wanted to learn that difference. You will, I said. It usually takes something costing you first. He nodded slowly and looked out the window at the yard, and I thought that was about right. Some things you cannot learn from watching someone else. You have to arrive at them through your own losses, your own silence, your own mourning, in a parking lot where you finally hear yourself think. The house is mine. The sage walls hold the light well in the afternoon. My chair is where it belongs. The mat at the door is plain and gray, and it does not announce anything because it does not need to. The people who belong here know they belong here, and they knock. That is enough. After everything, that is more than enough. If you are watching this and something in it sounds like your own house, your own table, your own careful silence, I want you to hear this. You do not have to wait for someone to change the locks before you decide to come home to yourself. The moment is earlier than that. The moment is the first time you make yourself smaller than you are and tell yourself it is fine. That is when the clock starts. And the good news, the only good news I have to offer, is that you can stop the clock whenever you are ready. You can sit in the car for 42 minutes and let everything become clear. And then you can come home. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this stayed with you? And tell me, what city are you watching from tonight?